Hager, and I'm the host of the Peacemakers podcast for Enneagram 9s. And you may have found this video because you listened to my most recent episode that came out on April the 14th, and I told you to come here and watch the video. So I wanted to post a video to let everyone know, because I know you're just dying to know. But I have not really said anything through my Instagram community, Enneagram 9 stories, or I haven't posted a podcast since my first 3 launched on March the 18th. And I wanted to give an update on, I'm going to tell you what happened to me as an Enneagram 9, navigating that first part of the launch and where it's brought me to today. So first of all, I have an Instagram account, Enneagram 9 Stories, so you may have found me through that community. At the beginning of this year, 2020, pretty soon into 2020, I had decided that I was going to start the podcast for Enneagram 9s, and so I was kind of like on a 6-week track to record and learn. First of all, learning how to do a podcast, learning all the tech, components of recording and getting equipment and everything, and then recording those, planning them, recording them, and then moving towards my launch date, which was March the 18th. So the plan was to have my first 3 out that first day, and then a week later release one the following week, and then every week after that. And then the world changed. Everything kind of changed, and in that track of of kind of like living in my that driven space that I'd been on since the beginning of January, it was like I was being forced to come to a stop, but I was pushing through, trying to still make it work. And really it threw me off really like big time, because the podcast and putting myself out here like this through this avenue, through social media world, and through, recording my voice and putting my ideas out into the world, that was a really big step for me. And I felt, really proud that I was moving in that direction after having a history of not doing that in my life, having a history of making commitments and not sticking to them, and kind of feeling like shameful about that. And, like, when are you going to get your act together, basically? I felt really good about where I was with things, and that I'd been staying committed to what I wanted to do. And so my daughter and my husband, of course, my daughter's in school. She's in kindergarten, and my husband is a teacher. And so about a month ago, they were home. We live in Tennessee, and just all of a sudden they were home. And so they're like, trying to get their life adjusted to what that looked like when they started being home. And I work from home anyway, so I was still like, go, 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 go. So like that first week that we were on quarantine, I was like trying to adjust every single thing so that I could stick to my commitment of getting those podcasts out. That was like my top priority. Is anyone else out there like me as a type 9 that like prioritizing things is not my forte? If you give me a list of things, they're all going to look like the most important thing to do. Unfortunately, in this situation, because I have a history of not following through on my commitments, I was trying to be driven by that, by like kind of my shame of not being committed to things in the past. Meanwhile, my family is home, and we're all bumping into each other and really just needing us to stop and get like a good, system, or just kind of even stop and think like, what are we doing? What is this time going to look like? But for a good week, I was just still trying to crank out the next episodes. So, #fail. That was not what I needed to do. I just needed to stop. So, long story short, those first 3 episodes came out on March the 18th, and pretty much as soon as they came out, like that next day, I was just like, hello, like wake up call. You need to chill and things don't have to look the way that you wanted them to look, and really like focusing on slowing yourself down and like regrouping and figuring out what this next period of our life looks like is the priority. So I did. So I just, we stopped, and for really like a good week, I mean, I was still doing some stuff. I've still been doing some things through the Facebook community that we have, but I've just had to put a pause on the plan that I had before, and I had to shift my perspective and shift everything so that I could be available to myself, I could be available to my family, and really just I was just recognizing that like if I'm not living out of that place of myself, that I'm like in touch with me, then whatever I do is going to be off. Like if I'm negating my family so that I can be driven and stick to a commitment, then I'm not like lining up with who I am, and I'm not being true to them. And then if I'm creating content and putting it out there, again, for that sake of sticking to my commitment, then that's not going to be content or ideas or anything that comes from a place of genuine, like, I guess, it's not going to be coming from a place of being at rest with myself, which I'm growing to understand is like the thing for me as a 9 is to be at rest within myself so that I can be speaking from a place of health, and I can, I guess, be in touch with my core so that I can offer things to people that are actually going to be helpful to them. So we shifted. That was about, that was probably like the 3rd or 4th week into March. I shifted my perspective, and since then, like I've just felt like a kind of like a wellspring of life coming up in me, because I've been making decisions out of a place of like I said, like out of a place of peace within myself. So since then, so at first I was off. I was trying to live in like a 3 space and allowing some shame come in because of that. I was trying to force myself to live in a 3 space when I just needed to be like present with myself, which I think is one of the biggest things that a 9 can do. I wanted to just share a few things that have been really important for me to keep in mind during this COVID-19 quarantine experience. The first thing is something that I learned from the episode of The Art of Growth that Joel Hubbard and Jim Zartman put out right at the beginning of the quarantine. And the thing that has stuck with me is that they said, whenever we're going through crisis, that we are not functioning at our highest capacity. And I do have a background in counseling and kind of have been in this space of personal development for a while. But you know, I forget that, okay, I'm not functioning at my highest capacity whenever I'm under stress. And nobody is. So when we are going through any life transition, whether it's moving or having a child or getting married, there's going through a divorce or whatever, there's just this extra stress that's coming in on us. And I mean, hello, I think that this experience we're all going through is like possibly one of the strangest, if not one of the more stressful worldwide situations we've all been in at one time. So I just wanted to bring up that point that I was reminded through that episode of The Art of Growth, is that we need to kind of give ourselves a little bit of grace, because we're not functioning at our highest capacity. And for type 9, that probably means that we're negating our feelings and we may be numbing out. I don't know what you guys are doing, but some of the 9s I'm talking to are like, they feel more lazy during this time. They're like watching more TV, they're eating more, they're kind of going to those things that we fall back on to make ourselves feel better whenever crisis is going on. Another thing that I was reminded of when I listened to an episode of Brene Brown's, she just also came out with a podcast. I say also because I like to put myself in her league. Anyway, one thing that I learned from her first podcast is that when we're going through something new, it's just hard. It doesn't matter who you are, how many times you've done something new. We're like forming new neural pathways when we do new things. So she was just talking about her experience as a podcaster, even though she's been a speaker for years. She has spoken, in front of crowds for years, and she knows her stuff and she knows her research. She's written books, but like just the act of doing a podcast and talking into a microphone and shifting into that has been hard for her. And so she made that analogy with this COVID-19 quarantine. I mean, it's back to the same thing. We need to give ourselves a lot of grace and a lot of space to breathe and recognize that it's okay not to be okay. Even if we feel like we're doing okay, it's still important to give ourselves more time to rest, to meditate or pray, or to spend time with others, to connect with others. This is like more important than ever to be focusing on how am I listening to ourselves. If we kind of recognize that we're trying to numb out to those feelings, calling up a friend, or I know one thing that we started doing in our Enneagram 9 Stories community is doing a call once a week where we just hop onto Zoom and we just say, hey, and see other people's faces. I mean, some of us, some people have family that they're interacting with all the time, and they need to get away and maybe talk to some people online because they just get a break from that. And then other people are at home by themselves. Maybe they don't have kids, or they're not married, or, they're just kind of on lockdown by themselves. And so, we all kind of have our thing that we're going through right now. I just want to give the message, just give yourself a lot of love and a lot of grace, and don't let this be a time where you let time pass and don't give yourself the love that you need, or give yourself the space that you need to grieve, or give yourself, a good conversation with a friend where you can talk long enough that some of those feelings and thoughts will come out. If you've listened to this most recent episode of the Peacemakers podcast, that's one of the things I talk about is numbing out to ourselves, numbing out to our feelings and emotions. And sometimes for me, it takes a good 30 minutes of talking and someone like asking me questions, or me just being really intentional to talk about how I feel, to get down to the bottom of like how I really do feel. It's easy to say, oh, I'm good, or I'm fine, everything's fine, or to put kind of a spin on, things like going to the positive, because there are positives that are happening right now. There's lots of blessings. There's lots of positive things I can talk about. But giving ourselves the time and space and permission to say, I feel kind of off, or I feel sad, or this is hard to go through this, or just kind of letting yourself feel some of that fear with other people. And because that's kind of like releasing some of that anger or sadness or grieving that we might have, but we might be pushing it down because it's just our go-to response in stress. Okay, so I want to let you know of a few things that are coming up for this community. I have 4 or 5 podcast episodes that are going to be coming out over the next couple of weeks. And they're all going to be, or the one that I'm releasing on Tuesday, which you may have listened to, it was taken from an Enneagram panel that I recorded a few weeks ago on Zoom. And what I'm doing is creating episodes using that audio and then intermixing it with myself, just some things that are also going on with me. So my perspective, taking their perspective and putting it together to provide some insight for you guys, hopefully as Enneagram 9s, that you can get some value from. And then in about 2 weeks, I have an interview that I did with Joel Hubbard from The Art of Growth. He's one of the hosts of the show, and he's a Enneagram coach. And I have part 1 and part 2 of that interview coming out. It's ready. I'm just putting some other episodes out first, but I'm super excited for that. So kind of watch on my Enneagram 9 Stories Instagram for some information on that, or you can just subscribe to the podcast. Okay, so that is an update. I hope you guys are all doing well. If you would like to join the Enneagram 9 Stories Facebook community, that's a great place for some super friendly people, all kind of on different levels of understanding of the Enneagram, but we're all desiring to grow. It's a positive community, but it's not like a community where we're like stuck in the clouds either. I feel like we do a good job of talking about struggles, but also like, having a positive, kind of a positive place to go if you just want to be around some encouraging people. So that's all I had. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.